River Tales is sponsored by Southeast Health. We traveled north to St. Genevieve, Missouri to visit the Felix Valley Home. This state historic site hosts the annual Le Réveillon, or the Awakening. The home is prepared with a traditional French feast for visitors to view, and music fills the home with the unique and familiar sounds of the holidays. Jim Baker is our guide to the past.
The celebration in the home was probably a fairly lively activity. Celebrations for the French oftentimes involve music, storytelling, get-togethers for families. St. Genevieve is an amazing remnant of the French colonial history here in the state of Missouri, and actually in this whole region in the mid-Mississippi River Valley. The settlement started out in the late 1740s down right along the river. It was an agricultural settlement to start out. After a big flood in 1785, the village moved up to the present location. We have an amazing collection of historic buildings here in St. Genevieve, houses that date back into the 1700s. Most notably, the architectural style that the French used in the colonial period, which was houses that were built from logs. But instead of being set horizontally, the logs in the French houses were used vertically. And it's a style known as pâteaux en terre or pâteaux sur sol, which mean post in the ground or posts on a sill. And so today, this is one of the very few places in the United States that you can come and visit and see those historic buildings in their original setting in that very rare architectural style. St. Genevieve is a remarkable place, and it's a remarkable place for people to visit. And the community has been welcoming tourists, scholars, students for literally decades because of the important architectural history here in St. Genevieve. As part of that whole feeling that you get in St. Genevieve, just walking down the streets is a history lesson in itself because of the multitude of historic styles of buildings and things that are going on. The community really has gotten behind this historic preservation effort in St. Genevieve. People have done private restorations of their homes. There are restored bed and breakfasts, restaurants, historic house museums. There's a real effort to preserve the colonial history that's here in St. Genevieve because it's a very rare place, and you can only find this kind of architecture in just a few places in this continent. The state historic site here in St. Genevieve started way back in 1970, and originally it was the Felix Vallée House composed the entire site, but we've expanded a great deal since that point. The Felix Valley House itself is an amazing example of kind of the American influence here in St. Genevieve. And this little community was under French control originally, then Spanish control in the latter part of the 1700s. Then it was part of the Louisiana Purchase after 1803. Americans started coming west into the territory and brought a whole new government, culture, language, and architectural styles followed as well. This particular house was built in 1818 by a man from Philadelphia. His name was Jacob Philipson. He was a merchant in the community, and so the house was built to have a residence and a store in the same structure. Philipson sold the building then in 1824 to the Vallée family, one of the very important early French colonial families here in St. Genevieve, and a young couple, Felix Vallée and his wife Odile, came to live in the house. They occupied it for the next 70 years. They were one of the really influential families in the community, and the family history goes way back into the colonial period throughout the 1800s then. Felix and Odile were very much part of the community. Odile was a very generous benefactor of the Catholic Church and school here in St. Genevieve, and they continued on the tradition of having a business and a residence in the house. So today, as visitors come to see the home, they're going to see what it looked like in the 1830s when the Menard and Valley store was in operation in part of the house, and Felix and Odile Valley lived in the rest of the house as their home. Christmas would have been a very religious celebration for the French here in St. Genevieve, and if you had been here back in the early part of the 1800s at the time of Christmas, Christmas Eve would have been the big part of the celebration. The celebration was known as Le Réveillon, which in French means the awakening. It's really the awakening of the Christmas celebration. It's what we try and recreate here at the Felix Vallée House during our French Christmas open house. This was a magnificent celebration, and it was one that you would never forget if you experienced it at that time. part of it was the anticipation of the event, the cooking and all the preparation for what was to happen after midnight mass, I'm sure was a thing that people looked for and anticipated really throughout the year. After church was over, they would come back to the home for a magnificent feast. And we try and recreate that feast as closely as we can in the dining room of the Felix Valley House. Tradition called for 13 different desserts at the celebration, which would have been probably the highlight of things to come. But as far as food would have been concerned during the celebration, they put out all the stops. And so they probably would have had a roast turkey or roast goose as part of the celebration, different kinds of sausages, breads, cheeses, wines, maybe some specialty things that came up from New Orleans on some of the steamboats. The 13 desserts actually are very symbolic. There are 12 for the 12 apostles, and the 13th dessert was for Christ. So as part of our celebration, we recreate 13 different historic desserts here at the Felix Valley House. We have those out displayed on the table to give visitors a sense of what they might have experienced if they had been lucky enough to spend Christmas Eve with Felix in Odile Valley. Our French Christmas open house this year is going to be held on Sunday from 1 to 7 p.m. It's a free event, and we encourage all of our friends to come and visit, experience this French Christmas celebration as you might have seen it in the early 1800s here in St. Genevieve. As part of our French Christmas celebration, a marvelous historic musical group known as the Peacocks performs in our parlor during the celebration of Le Réveillon. They play a lot of early French music, but a lot of traditional American music too for Christmas time celebrations. So visitors get a chance to hear some old-fashioned hammered dulcimers, and they enjoy just the whole ambiance of the celebration here in the house. It's a great way to kick off your own personal Christmas season and celebration, and you'll hear some old-time favorites and maybe some French music that you hadn't experienced before.
Each month we'll take this journey where there are many places to go, there are many interesting people to meet, and many new things to see. Join us again for River Tales.
I am a sister. Actually, I'm the oldest of 5. And my house is where everyone gathers. Taking care of things, well, that's just what I do. I'm a sister, and cancer doesn't change that.
At the Southeast Cancer Center, we know that your life doesn't stop because of cancer. You are a person who touches other lives every day. Ask your doctor about the difference at the Southeast Cancer Center.